The New Orleans Pelicans absolutely cannot draft Ace Bailey unless they do this one thing. I'll tell you what in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans at NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Friday, a game day for the New Orleans Pelicans. They're going to take on the Los Angeles Lakers if you're staying up late here. But we're going to be talking about the draft and kind of the landscape of the NBA when it comes to shooting as a whole. I've got some really interesting stats that I'm going to share with y'all here. And we're going to look at this through the lens of Ace Bailey, who's likely going to be the third overall pick out of Rutgers. Pelicans need to avoid him unless they do one thing first. We're going to cover it all in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everydayer. Listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. So let's get into it. What do you think of Ace Bailey? He's, in my opinion, so I want to get this out of the way first. Dude's good. Like, there's no getting around it. 17.6 points per game, 7 rebounds, 1.3 assists, 1.3 blocks. He shot 34.6% from three. You know, he does a number of things really, really well, gets to the line, has about a steal per game. This is a very good player. But I don't know if he just fits for the New Orleans Pelicans. And if you're trying to make the playoffs next season, fit is absolutely going to matter here. Because when you look at Ace Bailey, and we'll go through his strengths here in a minute, he reminds you of a guy like Michael Porter Jr. And that's someone that you would want on a team like this, right? A guy who is just an incredibly tough shot maker. This guy can basically get buckets anywhere out there, but particularly from the mid-range. This is someone who has a pull-up in his game. When he's in that mid-range, he has leaners, he has floaters, any sort of two-point shot. This guy absolutely has it. And when he gets going, he piles in the points. And so at 6'10", over 200 pounds as an 18-year-old, the size is there too. This is someone who has all the tools to be a very elite player in the NBA. Maybe. All the tools are there. He can get there. But it's his shot profile going to derail him here, right? Michael Porter Jr. is probably the best case example for him. There's a lot of Brandon Ingram in him. Here. That can be good or bad depending on who you are. Brandon Ingram is a great player, just got paid by get after the trade to the Toronto Raptors, right? We understand that. But you've got to build around that type of guy in a very specific way, and that's what Ace Bailey is. I was talking to someone with the Pelicans early in the season. We were talking about Ace Bailey, and I said, is there any fit with Ace Bailey on this team? And that person said to me, yeah. Well, or he's like, no. He goes, you saw the fit for the past 5 years with Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. And did it exactly work? And the answer to that was no. And that's why those two had to just be broken up. But man, this dude, if you're just looking for buckets in crunch time or late in the game when someone just has to create their own shot, there might not be a better player in the draft than Ace Bailey at that. And he has every kind of shot, just hook shots, in between shots, floaters, just a straight up pull up jumper, lean fadeaways, all of those. He can do it all. And with that athleticism, you look at him and you go, oh, maybe you can't pass on this guy with the, say, third overall pick. We're going to assume Cooper Flag goes 1 and Dylan Harper goes 2nd. So you can use him in so many different ways as your main shot creator, but he does enough off ball. He moves really well and he plays with an extremely high motor. So he's always moving. He's running through screens. He's cutting. He's doing those sorts of things. It just ends in a mid-range jumper is usually what it is. And while he's not a good defender, he has the tools to be a good defender. So saying all that, especially at 6'10", right? Like, oh, I get it. They need more length. They need more size. And he's a pretty good rebounder for his position here. This is someone that they need to be looking at, right? Like he's a near, this year in college, it was 17.5% defensive rebound rate. New Orleans could use a wing that defends at that high level, or a power forward that really defends at that high level, or even just a guard, because he can kind of do that a little bit too. You need a guy like that on this team. But it's that shot selection that is so concerning to me. He does not have the tightest handle. And so when he dribbles and gets into some trouble there, he's going to just take a contested mid-range jumper. We've seen this here play out in New Orleans. And if you want to get into the playoffs next season, that is not going to cut it whatsoever, right? You're looking at a guy that at this point is going to just help you. You need someone who just fits if you're committed to building around Zion Williamson. And I just don't see a ton of fit between Zion Williamson and Ace Bailey. Because if we did, you'd still have Brandon Ingram on this team. Maybe you wouldn't because of, money things, but that was the big problem here. And he's not an elite finisher at the rim. This is not someone who gets downhill, gets to the rim, and just scores. And that's where his 2-pointers are coming from, right? He's most effective when it comes to pull-up twos. So, off the dribble twos that are often going to be contested. It's hard to contest a 6'10" guy, but you get what I'm saying here. And that's where 2/3 of his total shot attempts have come from mid-range. 2/3, 66.6% come from mid-range. So a third is between the rim and three. That's just not going to work on this team, even with all those other intangibles. And he's not a bad three-point shooter. This is someone who shot 35% from three last year, but then you start to worry because you look at his free throw percentage, and it was really rough to start the year, right around 50%. It got better as the season went on, but he really struggled from the free throw line for a while. Finished at the end of the season 69.2% from the free throw line, which given where he was is a pretty good thing. And that number went up in conference play to 72.2%. He was much better during the stretch run, and that's something that I value when evaluating players. But the three-point shot is very streaky. It's not going to be respected at the NBA level. And is he just too much of a mid-range assassin for this to work? And I think the answer to that is yes. We've seen how that works in the Pelicans offense with Zion Williamson. So and we'll get to this in the third segment, right? You can see it there if you're watching on YouTube, what I have listed there. If you're committed to building around Zion Williamson and you end up at 3 and you're looking at Ace Bailey or VJ Edgecombe, I think they're going to lean VJ Edgecombe, even though I get that maybe Ace Bailey is the more talented player in the vacuum. And you might be going, Jake, in the top 5, top 3, you just got to draft best player available. And to an extent, I agree with you. But at a certain point, if you're trying to win, you need to do what makes the most sense for your team and not constantly building, well, if we trade one of these guys in 2-3 years, at least we have the other one. If you're trying to win next year in a tough Western Conference when you're dealing with injuries already, you're going to need someone who just fits better. And that would not be Ace Bailey, even though I think Ace Bailey is an unbelievably talented player and going to work. It's just going to be a little bit tough to find the right fit for him and build a modern offense around him, because I got some incredible stats for y'all. Some incredible stats about three-point shooting that the Pelicans really need to be paying attention to, that Ace Bailey himself should be paying attention to if he wants to have the best career possible in the NBA. I'm going to share with you what those are. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. I actually had one of those. You could probably hear it in my voice before recording the show because I'm on Locked On NBA tonight. Meaning I'm staying up late to watch all the games. I won't start recording Locked On NBA. That should be your second listen today until about midnight or so. So if you're feeling a little bit tired, if you just need a little bit of a boost throughout the day or to watch a late Pelicans game, 5 Hour Energy can help you. 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. So whether you're staying up late watching basketball, maybe you're leaving work early to go get in around at the twilight hours, it's cheaper to go play golf then too, and you need a burst after a long work day, a little bit of energy. 5 Hour Energy is perfect for that sort of thing. And they're going to keep you refreshed. So if you're traveling, going to a game, whatever it is, keep it in your pocket. You're going to be good to go. So head to 5hourenergy.com to find 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, my favorite, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. If you need one right now, grab 5-Hour Energy at your local grocery or convenience store. They're basically everywhere. So stock up today and stay energized, and go to 5hourenergy.com. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is also brought to you by Wayfair, which my whole place is basically furnished by. Spring's here, and that means it's home project season. So whether you're refreshing a room or tackling a full renovation, Wayfair is the best kept secret for all things home improvement. So from small updates like stylish cabinet hardware to major upgrades like new vanity sinks or outdoor lighting, Wayfair has quality products for every budget. I just refreshed the office a little bit, put in a new couch in here that I got off of Wayfair so that when I'm planning out the show, I can sit in comfort. It's red like the Pelicans here, which I love too. So their free and fast shipping made it so easy. You don't need a big truck. There's no hauling heavy items from the store. And they have top brands like GE, Moen, and others at great prices. And shopping's going to be really easy. You're going to find exactly what you want to fit your space and your style. So Wayfair makes home improvement easy. Get started now at wayfair.com. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Make Locked On NBA Game Night your second listen today. It's literally there 7 days a week, recapping every single game around the NBA. If you missed out on the Ja Morant game winner, which was an unbelievably fun game, or the historic stat line that Giannis put up, go check out Locked On NBA Game Night. I'm going to be on there with John Krause of Locked On Celtics. It's a lot of fun. And don't forget about the Locked On Pelicans daily newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Pelicans newsletter. So let's get into some stats of why Ace Bailey scares me off a little bit. Again, it's not really like a knock on him as a player. Like, the dude is good. Dude's going to be really, really good, in my opinion. But if you're trying to win at a high level in the NBA, you've got to kind of lean into what's going on at the NBA level. And that is a lot of threes. It's not a lot of mid-rangers, not a lot of contested mid-rangers either. That's what you've got to kind of think about and look at here. And the Pelicans have just not done a good job of this. They're one of the worst when it comes to three-point attempts per game, and that's even with Zion playing just 30 games this year, missing him for more than he's played, and this team is still 26 in three-point attempts, nowhere near that 40 number that they wanted. They're taking 34.4 per game. If you add an Ace Bailey, that number's not improving. It's not improving. Just not going to happen, at least not early on in his career. And when you see what teams are doing, look, you might say it's unfun. You might hate it. It doesn't matter what you think about it. It does not matter what you think about the three-point shot being the most important thing in the NBA right now. It's happening. You just got to embrace it. Otherwise, you're going to lose, and that's what this is here. So this comes from Kirk Goldsberry, who I've met once before. Super nice guy. With some incredible stats here, talking about this over at The Ringer. He said, for the first time in NBA history, missed threes are now more common than missed twos. The average NBA game now includes one missed three per minute. And something to keep in mind when we talk about the three-point shot versus two-point shots, all of that stuff here. And that's simply this, right? It comes to an efficiency standpoint. 33.3% from three is the equivalent to 50% from two. So if you can shoot above 33.3% from three, that's better than a 50% shooter from two. You get to 34%, the numbers work out in your favor, and it kind of becomes a math thing, I think. And now his talk is about eliminating the corner three in the NBA because 1 in 9 shots are now corner threes, which is kind of wild. And more points are now scored from the corners than the entire mid-range. Think about that one for a second. 23.8 points per game on average are coming from the corner three. 17.3 points per game are coming from non-paint twos, so basically mid-range shots. You need to lean into this. You need to lean into this. Now, I'm not going to get into should they eliminate the corner three or anything like that, right? Like, I get it. The corner threes have 84 square feet of space on an NBA court. Non-paint twos is almost 800 square feet out there on an NBA court. It has nothing to do with the aesthetics of the game or anything like that. You need to take more corner threes. You need to take more threes when you're seeing these kind of numbers. Because, yeah, you can go shot for a team that shoots threes versus a team that's taking twos, and you will lose every time. In fact, you can actually even shoot better than a team taking those type of threes and still lose the game if everything else is equal here, because the three is worth more than two. Great insight from me here, right? That's how this is going right now. And look, there are times when I miss some of the mid-range, that kind of work and things like that. And look, guys have carved out great careers being mid-range assassins. Carmelo Anthony was just announced to be an NBA or a basketball Hall of Famer. I loved watching Melo play. I'm going to enjoy watching Ace Bailey play too. But Carmelo Anthony, was largely kind of relegated to a different role later in his career. And partially that is because of age and other things like that. But he didn't really have the ability to elongate his career by taking far more threes and things like that. And that was to his detriment. Think about this with Ace Bailey, right? Like, you need to, let me see what Carmelo Anthony, some of those numbers were from him in terms of three-point attempts. Oh, he actually shot pretty well in his career, but he still never took really over 6 attempts per game the final 3 years there or so, and that was something he definitely needed to be doing. So, when you think about these guys, you've got to lean into that three-point shot for better or worse. You might hate it. It don't matter. That's what this league has become. You need guys that can shoot from the corners. You need guys that are really comfortable taking a variety of three-point shots. And when you have someone like Zion Williamson, you need the spacing for it. You need to punish teams for how they defend Zion Williamson. It comes down to that. Until he's not on the team, we'll talk about this in the next segment as we go back to Ace Bailey and all that. You need to keep prioritizing Zion Williamson, building around him, adding those type of players. We kind of knew for the final year or two with Brandon Ingram, and this is after me for years defending that Ingram and Zion can coexist, they can work, but it just never happened, and you never saw Ingram change his shot profile enough to, work with Zion. And look, these other guys can be good three-point shooters. Zion can't be. You're not going to look for him to do that. You may as well then just get rid of him and get just a cheap shooter or other shooters if that's what you need to do, because you're kind of taking away what makes him great. So if that's the case, you've got to put shooters around Zion. And too many times we've seen lineups that just don't have that sort of thing, and it fails. And that's been part of the problem. This goes back to the other day when we were talking about process over results, right, and all that. Some of the process hasn't been good either, because you haven't put the right kind of lineups out there. There's just never been that pure stretch five around Zion Williamson to see if that would have made a massive difference or anything like that. So you've got to just, those numbers say it, right? If teams are scoring more points from the corners and you're not doing that, and you're taking those mid-range numbers and it's kind of going by the averages that Kirk Goldsberry had said, you're losing out on about 5.5 points per game. You're just think about that. If you kind of just go with that, the corner threes versus the non-paint twos, you are starting every game 5.5 points down. That can't be how you do this. You're making winning harder on yourselves. That can't happen anymore for this team. Unless they go through a rebuild. And if you're doing that, that means you're trading Zion Williamson away. Guess what? Then you can draft Ace Bailey. Let's look at that scenario that's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by OpenPhone. Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone, and before you know it, you're juggling customer calls all day and night. And as your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. So that's where OpenPhone comes in. It's the number one business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. So for just $15 a month, the cost of a few coffees, you get complete transparency. You get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. OpenPhone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. And it also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you're going to have a rundown of your calls and action items the second you hang up. And if you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. So right now, OpenPhone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba for 20% off 6 months. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have an existing number with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. For your second listen, please tell me the Saints are going to take a QB. Please. And they're going to do that. Who's it going to be? Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints is going to make sense of all of it for you, tell you who the Saints are going to draft, why they're going to go in the direction they're going to go, even if it's not a QB. Locked On Saints, make them your second listen today, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's look at this. The one situation, I teased this in the beginning, the one situation where you can draft Ace Bailey. You do that if you're trading Zion. You do that if you're trading Zion, whether that's this offseason or you're trading him in the future and you really believe in Ace Bailey as a player. Look, Ace Bailey will work with a number of the other guys on the team. Call him a non-spacer. Zion's a non-spacer. You kind of give him the Zion role a little bit. That's fine. Trey Murphy III is going to work great with Ace Bailey, or Ace Bailey will work great with Trey Murphy is probably what we need to say in that scenario. CJ McCollum, sure. DeJounte Murray, yeah, absolutely. Herb Jones, we can see it here. You're adding length. You're not all building around a guy that's kind of like out of position and a little bit undersized for his position in Zion Williamson, despite the immense talent that Zion Williamson has. So by doing that, I think you can, if you know you're going to get rid of Zion Williamson, not, well, we'll try and we'll figure it out. If it doesn't work, then we'll, no. You've got to commit to the path that you want to go down. If you're on the clock at number 3, and you decide to draft Ace Bailey, it needs to be, we're going to work on trading Zion Williamson as soon as possible. We know we're going to be bad this year too because of it. And we're going to start kind of making those moves in mind. Not let's see if it works out. Not let's try and feel these guys out. It's commit to the path and the plan. No other win now moves or anything like that. And even if you don't trade Zion Williamson right away, you have to know that basically it puts him on the clock the same way that when Trey Murphy got that extension, it kind of started the clock on Brandon Ingram's tenure here in New Orleans. That is the only way that this will work. Otherwise, you are just, what's the definition of insanity? Repeating the same mistake, action, doing the same thing and expecting different results. That's how similar Ace Bailey and Brandon Ingram can be. Again, they're both good players. No one's saying they're bad or anything like that. Again, you could see in a crazy world, this is, high NBA comp, though he is significantly better size than Carmelo Anthony, having that kind of career. And again, Melo just made the Hall of Fame. This is a 10-time All-Star, a 6-time All-NBA guy, right? Dude was good, incredibly good, and so much fun to watch. But the fit just is not there. And if you're trying to be competitive next year, you need someone that's going to make an impact right away. DeJounte Murray's not going to be ready to start the season. Trey Murphy, we hope will be ready to start the season, but might not be. Will Guillory of The Athletic put it out there the other day that, hey, maybe Herb Jones is not going to be ready to start the season. So if you're going to draft someone and you're intent on making the playoffs and not bottoming out again and not trading away pieces and maybe then fighting at best for the play-in tournament, really the worst place to be in. Look at the Chicago Bulls, despite some of the kind of fun success that they're having right now, they're still not any closer to getting out of the NBA purgatory that they're in. We're going to lose in the first round every year, but we're not going to get good enough draft picks to try and kind of build up a team, right? They're chasing a play-in spot, barely a play-in spot this year, and they're probably going to lose in the play-in tournament. They're going to be at the end of the lottery, and cool, enjoy the 13th or 14th pick in this draft. Was that worth it for 2 extra home playoff games? Or a chance at that. Just a chance at that. You wouldn't even have gotten those if you're the 13th or 14th pick. That's not a great situation for the team to be in whatsoever. You've got to avoid that because the Bulls just stuck in the middle and it's not going to change anytime soon. And that under no circumstances is where we want to see the Pelicans be. So if that's going to be the case, you need to pick a direction. So if you're at 3, that might mean you trade the pick for somebody that's going to help right away. I don't think they should do that. I think at that point, you draft VJ Edgecombe or someone else that you like, and then you kind of work with what you got. Or you can draft Ace Bailey and know that you're going to trade Zion Williamson eventually and kind of commit to being bad. And hey, we got Trey Murphy under contract for a number of years. We now have Ace Bailey in the mix here too. You have tradable contract in CJ McCollum. You can figure out what to do with DeJounte Murray. We're going to keep Herb Jones. Jose Alvarado might be able to fetch you a first-round pick. The Bucks really wanted him at the trade deadline and we're calling, and Pelicans said no. So if that's going to be the case, go down that path. And you start the full-on rebuild, and we will talk about what that will look like and how rough that could be if that's the route that the Pelicans end up going. And it would be rough, y'all. But you hope to come out the other side looking like the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are one of the youngest teams in the league, the best record in the league. They look like they're the presumed title favorite, at least coming out of the Western Conference. And they have all these assets to go do whatever they want. They had cap space this offseason, which was wild to think about, and everything that they're kind of capable of doing. They can only get better, essentially. You want to be in that position. And they went through a couple rough years of rebuilding, taking on bad contracts and all those things, and that's what it would be. And as much as unfun it would be, at least you have young, bankable guys that look like they have star potential to be very, very good. And again, Ace Bailey's going to be good, just doesn't fit with Zion. But if you don't have Zion, I don't know, draft Ace Bailey then. Then I think it would be fine. Then you're not worried about the fit. Or at least if you know that Ace Bailey is going to kind of be part of your future, but Zion Williamson won't. And that's kind of where things stand with the New Orleans Pelicans right now. That's what makes this draft and the lottery date so intriguing to me. Of how is this all going to go down? Will it all work? We're going to be covering it all here on the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'll be back with you all next time.